Mr. Jason Key. So Jason here is with Lincoln Financial, and he'll be going over the 403B potential market and a few of the insights that are coming up there. So Jason, thank you for coming. You can take it from here.
All right, very good. Thank you, guys. And on behalf of Lincoln, just want to say thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. Impressive speakers that you've had already. And on behalf of Lincoln, we're glad to be here. Again, my name is Jason Key. I lead consultant relations for Lincoln's institutional retirement business. And in that space, 403B represents about 50% of our overall institutional block of business. So it's a marketplace that we're very familiar with. So to start off, I'll just say that 403B is a very resilient marketplace. It's a great opportunity for advisors that are focused in the 401k space to differentiate their book of business. And the marketplace is needing the skills and expertise of you. So it's a great opportunity to tap into a newer block of business. So try to move on. There we go. So as far as today's agenda, we wanted to cover a few things. One, just talk about tax-exempt organizations. Then we'll jump into ERISA versus non-ERISA 403Bs. We'll talk about the 403B marketplace, discuss some key differences between 401ks, 403Bs, and then we'll conclude with opportunities to grow in the 403B space. So tax-exempt organizations, when you think about 501c3s, they can have a variety of different plan types. It's common, especially with quasi-governmental entities, that there are multiple plan types affiliated to one entity. Now, you might find a 403B, a 401A, and a 457 plan all within one organization. On the ERISA, non-ERISA side, in order for a 403B plan to be non-exempt or to be exempt from ERISA, they have to be affiliated to a church, they have to be a government entity, or they have to be a 501c3 with limited involvement from the employer. So a couple examples of what that limited involvement could mean. One would be a requirement for voluntary participation. So no auto enrollment into the plan. Another one could be salary deferrals only, so no employer contributions into the plan. That would satisfy the requirement in order to be considered limited involvement from the employer and therefore a non-ERISA 403B plan. One thing I will say is that in the 403B space, most specifically with larger 403B plans, let's just say $10 million and above, most often you will find them to be ERISA 403B plans. So when you think about the 403B marketplace, really the $1.4 trillion market is divided into these four quadrants, but it's about 70% dominated by higher education and healthcare. So in each of these quadrants, we identified a few characteristics that I just wanted to reference. So with higher education, you know, there is a trend towards single vendor solutions, but especially with universities, you will still find a multi-vendor situation. And depending on the state, there could be regulations and laws that require more than one vendor. But outside of that, there is a preference and a lean towards a single vendor type of solution. I will say that you'll find moderate advisor involvement in these marketplaces, specifically in the larger plans. A lot of advisors do get involved today. In the healthcare space, the majority of those plans are single vendor retirement plans today. The majority of them are risk-covered plans. This is where you find most advisors already engaged in these marketplaces. K through 12, with K through 12, these are your multi-vendor organizations. In most cases, there is advisor involvement that typically play a dual role. They're involved at the plan level, but also involved at the participant level, providing one-on-one planning to individual participants. The opportunity in 403B is really found in this other quadrant, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation. So what I'm showing you here is strictly 403B. If you do layer on governmental entities on top of the 403B block of business, the total assets go from about 1.4 to 2.9 trillion. So it's a completely separate animal, if you will. So in the next few slides, I wanted to give you some examples of differences between 403Bs, 401ks, but with each page, we'll dig into kind of one specific area that I thought would be most compelling. So as far as the funding vehicle, in your 403B plans, specifically ERISA 403B plans, they're going to take one of two forms. It's either going to be an annuity contract or a mutual fund construction within a custodial account. I think that this is probably one area that's kept people away from the 403B business in the past. And historically, that's been the case. Most of these plans have been individual annuity-based contracts written with an individual participant, not at the plan level. Several years ago, the trend was to move away from those individual contracts to really resemble your traditional 401k plan, where they are plan level agreements, mutual fund based platforms. Now, with that being said, as Brian and Pat referenced earlier, there is a movement towards CITs and 403B plans. We are not there yet, but eventually we will be. And with that being the case, when you do come across 403B plans, it's very common that the fixed account investment that's going to be made available to participants will be a general account type structure. And often with those types of investments, there's different rules of liquidity in order to move contracts from one account to another. And this is something that we'll tap into a little bit later on, where provider consideration is very important to assist you with the movement of money, specifically out of some of those legacy contracts. So that's the funding vehicles. Next, wanted to move over to eligible employees. So eligibility. In 403B plans, the primary rule is universal availability, which simply means you can't exclude employees. However, there are a few important provisions that allow you to exclude some employees within the plan. Some of those include employees that work less than 20 hours a week, student employees, and those that would defer less than $200 into the plan. Moving on from there, plan-to-plan transfers. So I'd mentioned earlier that most of the modern day 403B plans that you find are single vendor plans that are written at a plan level. There's a plan document, a master service agreement, if you will, and participants are under that master plan. You will find situations where there are legacy accounts that are still affiliated with that employer. And in order for a participant to move money from those legacy accounts into the current 403B plan offered by that employer, it requires something called a contract exchange. So this is where, kind of terminology comes into play. Historically, they were referred to as 9024 transfers. Today, they are called contract exchanges. But the point being that movement of money from legacy 403B contracts into current day 403B contracts is possible through this process called contract exchange. And then when you think about non-discrimination testing, the big difference is really the lack of the ADP test that you would find in a 401k plan. Again, universal availability applies here, and along as that is met, the ADP test is not applicable in the 403B space. And in addition to that, there's no top-heavy testing required for your ERISA 403B plans. So when you think about all that, I think probably the most important thing is to think about where are the opportunities to grow in the 403B space. So what we started with is sharing with you the top 5 ERISA covered industries. And it's important to point out that the data you see here would be ERISA covered plans. It does not include non-ERISA 403B plans, which is a sizable chunk of the overall marketplace as well. To give you an example of that, religious entities in the ERISA covered market, we're showing that to be about $31 billion in assets. Our records indicate that approximately another $30 billion in assets exist for non-ERISA religious-based organizations. So a lot of opportunity in the 403B market. I will mention, and I mentioned at the beginning, that diversification of your 401k practice is an important benefit when you think about getting into the 403B market. There's also, it's rewarding as well. A lot of these organizations are very mission and purpose driven. So it's a different way of thinking about how you work and where you apply your expertise. When you're thinking about tapping into that marketplace, I would encourage everyone to think about looking at your current employee or current client base. Think about talking to your business owners and key contacts that you may have on organizations that they're involved with, boards that they're involved with on the nonprofit side, and an opportunity for you to get involved and help support those organizations. As I had mentioned before, historic hesitation with the 403B space was that the assets were a little locked up. A lot of that has changed. Liquidity is much more prevalent today in 403B plans than there's been in the past. Group plan opportunity. I'll put this in there because you do hear more about 403B PEPs. There is an opportunity to look at consolidating 403B plans under one group plan structure, which is starting to pick up more and more attention in the 403B market. Provider selection, so that is important. So when you think about, there's different terminology with 403B plans. There's different levels of compliance complexity with 403B plans. So I would strongly encourage everyone to think about provider selection. When you think about getting involved in the 403B market, consider providers that are specialists in this place that can essentially, you can leverage those resources primarily from the perspective of compliance services that providers have the ability to offer. When you think about these organizations, the needs that they have. So a lot of 403B plans, there is a need to modernize their plan design, simplify the administration that they have. As we see with all plan types, HR staffs are often under a lot of pressure, wearing many hats. So they're looking for seasoned professionals to step in and help them simplify administration of the 401k or 403B plan that they have. And then the last point, these are often more paternalistic organizations. So the ability to offer a more personalized experience for their participants is something that's often compelling and very important for these organizations. Again, they're very mission-based, purpose-driven organizations, and they really care about their people. So that's something that resonates quite a bit in 403B land. So with that, I know that we didn't have a whole lot of time. In conclusion, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. Again, keep in mind it's a great differentiator and diversifier to practice that you already have. Think about the providers that you choose to work with, leverage the expertise that is there. And again, feel free to reach out to us if you have any comments, questions. We'd love to be there to help.